Decks built out of the static glyphs discussed thus far resemble traditional approaches to hotbars in MMOs. Shroud of the Avatar offers another way to approach using your abilities, so-called dynamic glyphs. One can build a deck out of cards, each of which represents one of your glyphs. You can have multiple copies of cards for the same glyph. To build a deck out of dynamic glyphs, I will again return to the deck window. After creating a new deck, the hand at the bottom is completely empty. I'm going to leave the hand empty in this deck and instead focus on the two big windows which I've ignored thus far. The window on the right contains a list of all glyph cards which have been added to the deck, which is none at this time. The window on the left shows the possible glyphs from which you can make cards to add to the deck, as well as the number of cards you can make for each glyph. Simply drag a glyph from the left to the right windows to make a card, or you can double-click the glyph. Glyphs can also be dragged in from your skill window. The number of cards you can make from a dynamic glyph is equal to the maximum number of uses you would get if you had used that glyph statically instead. Notice that as we add cards, a number of slugs appear, and that number goes down the more cards we add. Decks built from dynamic glyphs require a minimum number of cards, which increases as your adventurer level goes up. If you don't meet this minimum card requirement, your deck will contain slug cards that do nothing but get in the way. When I enter combat with this new dynamic deck equipped, notice that at first my hand is entirely empty. At regular intervals, a card will be drawn randomly from the deck. This card will be placed into the first empty slot found, starting from the left side. If the card remains in the hand long enough, then it will start to decay. This frees the slot up for the next glyph. I can also force a glyph to decay by right-clicking on it. A card that decays in this way is returned to the deck and has the potential to be drawn again right away. Cards will also disappear from your hand when you use them, which fires off the glyph ability they are tied to. However, in this case, the card is not returned to the deck immediately. Instead, the card is placed on cooldown and will have to wait for its cooldown timer to expire before being returned to the deck.